a very warm welcome, very good morning to all of you. And yeah, so this is day 3, the final day, and we delve deep into the individual perspective of pro bono. So the day 1 was covering the corporate perspective, day 2 the NGO and the impact that pro bono can have with NGOs. Day 3 looks into the individuals, whether these are individuals from the corporate, whether these are individuals who are offering pro bono service personally, what goes on in their personal life, what goes on in their professional life, what goes on in their mind, in their heart. It is this discovery, and how is it that we're going to support them, that we're going to focus on the day 3. So this first session is a fireside chat. I hope I'm able to bring in more fire, but a warm fire to this, to warm all our hearts. And so amazingly nice panel. I have 3 people whom I have known for quite some time and quite well. I'm honored to have known them. So the first one is Mr. Harish Devarajan, and I'll call him Harish. Hi, Harish. Harish has been a head of HR at Hindustan Unilever, currently serves as an independent director at Bank of India, very active member of NHRD, the National Human Resource Network, is a leadership coach, is an HR mentor to possibly several well-known executives in the industry. Is also an author of a book called HR Here and Now, and is an alumnus of Accelerate. And I picked all this up from LinkedIn. So Harish, please excuse me if there's something that I should have done differently. I know Harish well enough, so I didn't ask for a formal introduction from him. Yeah, okay. And then the next one we have is Gopinath Govindan. And again, I call him Gopi. Gopi, I hope that's okay in public as well. Yes. And so Gopi is serving as a director HR with CLP India, and has also overseen its CSR and sustainability initiatives over a period of time. Gopi has also served as VP Corporate HR with Oracle Financial Services, which used to be iFlex earlier, and has also previously been with Hindustan Unilever and HPCL, and also an alumnus of Accelerate, one of the topmost HR institutes in the country. And I discovered this just now, both Gopi and Harish, that both of you are alumni of Excel, and possibly for just one intermediary or 2 intermediate batches in the middle. So did you know each other in the campus or something, or no?
News to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it is possibly be that we brought you together. So I am so very happy. Okay, and the third person with us is Kanchan Shastry. Kanchan hails from Hyderabad, is now settled in Bangalore. Kanchan is a supply chain professional with 13 plus years of industry experience covering IT, automotive, and e-commerce domains. Currently, Kanchan is heading the in-stock management function in Cloudtail, India. A doting mother to a 3-year-old, loves to dance in her free time. And I really love that, that introduction. It's really nice. Likes to write short blogs and tweets to express her views about life in general. Has dabbled briefly in volunteering, but we'll come more about that. So, amazing, so mother, dancer, you blog and you also tweet. People who, tweet a small blog, and the blogging is such a large one. I don't know, how do you manage that? So we'll cover a whole lot of those elements also over here. What brings us all together is this program that iVolunteer has called Whiteboard, that focuses on executives and leaders from the corporate sector, the private sector, and people who are in their individual capacity as leaders to come together and advise in a strategic manner non-profit boards, non-profit leaders or CEOs on how to manage the growth and sustainability of their organizations to have a much larger impact. So more on Whiteboard details later, but that is a program that brings us all together. Interestingly, there are all 3 different elements of Whiteboard that are represented over here. So Gopi is a very active member of the Whiteboard in Mumbai that we have, and Harish is a very active member of the Whiteboard in Bangalore that we have. And Kanchan, incidentally, has been a participant of another form of Whiteboard called the Corporate Whiteboard, where companies kind of, depute, say, their senior leaders. And so Kanchan at that time was working with Bosch, and Kanchan was deputed as one of the leaders, and she volunteered to be one of the leaders as part of the Corporate Whiteboard. And Harish was, in a way, mentoring that particular Whiteboard. So it's amazing to kind of see all of this come together. And we hope that, we'll be able to bring out more of your individual perspectives beyond the professional profiles that are seen on LinkedIn. So welcome again. Okay, so let me begin with Harish. And Harish, I've given your corporate profile, but then we come from the social sector, and we love to know who are you as an individual. So can you tell us, beyond these 5 tick marks, who's Harish, and obviously link it up with the pro bono journey.
Absolutely, thank you, Shalabh. Delighted to be here as part of this panel. Yeah. To introduce myself as a person, I'm a guy who loves being with people, enjoy engaging with a variety of activities and across domains, and make a positive difference to people and situation. That's how I would put the person I am. Yeah, and this is not something which has happened by accident. It's happened because of the kind of experiences I've had from a very long time ago. As a young student, I was a member of the scouting movement, and that's how I got introduced to the spirit of service. And in a school, there used to be this socially useful, productive work kind of concept. I am sure many of us have gone through that. And that's what kindled the social consciousness in me. And at home, both my parents were involved in social work, and therefore this became a normal kind of an engagement. And at XLRI, we were introduced to social impact. Yeah, we were encouraged to do things, do training programs, do development activities with the society around us. And of course, the company that I joined, Hindustan Unilever, has always sort of encouraged social engagement. As part of our training programs, leadership development activities, we were encouraged to go in teams and do projects which create a social impact. All of these things have really got me excited about the social thing. But as long as I was employed in the corporate world, this was a very, very low down in the priority order. And then when I was about 12 years ago, I decided that I'm going to step off the corporate scenario as an employee and start doing things which I love and enjoy most. I reprioritized my life. And that's when the social sector engagement started taking a bigger chunk of my time and attention. And I came in touch with iVolunteer, the whiteboard movement, and that got me introduced to doing engaged work in the social sector. Yeah, and nobody was paying me for this. Hindustan Unilever was not paying for my time. Yeah, so I was genuinely pro bono volunteering only 12 years ago. Yeah. And I started doing organizational development and strategy workshops for NGOs. I started getting on the advisory board of some of these civil society organizations. And I also started extending my leadership coaching service to people in the NGO and civil service organization space on a pro bono basis. And this is who I am today, and I love doing what I'm doing, Shalabh.
Thank you, Harish, for that introduction. And I'm sure Gopi, you understand that I'm going to carry the same with you. So, how do you describe yourself?
Perfect. So just realized that both Harish and I are alumni from the same institute, but in a way, if I have to look back, I think somewhere it is also Jesuit education, because I was with St. Xavier's before I moved on to XLRI. And the spirit of service probably started from those days. But broadly, I've also been fortunate in the companies that I worked with. Even though I have always been in the corporate sector, it's about 3 decades now. I've been fortunate to have right now, for example, I take care of HR, CSR, and corporate communications. And like I was sharing with Shalabh the other day, my instinctive attention is moving more towards CSR and sustainability as compared to the HR bit. So I have been fortunate to have the best of both worlds. But broadly, my life today has 2 or 3 anchors. So one is the regular corporate job, which also has elements of CSR and sustainability. I'm an assessor of business excellence and HR excellence. That again allows me to look at organizations in their context My whiteboard, engagement is another big ticket thing, which is again an extension of what I do, because it helps me, meet people, look at organizations, and I think we are not really as different as we believe we are. And my daughter, who's 19 years old and just about beginning to fly away, but still needs a lot of my time. So these are the 4 anchors in my life, at the moment.
Thank you, Gopi, for that warm note. And Kanchan, I have already introduced you. I think your introduction was a mix. Tell us, about if there's anything that I've missed. How do you describe yourself as a person, and your, introduction to the social sector?
Sure. I'll use an example, Shalabh, first. I think there is a myth among at least children in Indian society. And when I say children, maybe when I was a child or today's generation, that spirituality, religion, and social service are things for post-retirement life. I think that's something that, it's somehow probably either fed into our heads, or maybe we observe and feel that it's only for a certain generation of people to do. I think that's a myth that got busted for me from a spirituality religion perspective. I think when I saw maybe my parents and now my parents-in-law, I think there's no age for that. And similarly for, I think, contributing to the service sector or pro bono in any kind, I think, age is not a factor at all. So that's one bit that I would like to bring out here. And for me particularly, I think this reminder came strangely by a very, very trivial incident, if I may say so, where one of my team members, maybe in 2015 or 16, said to me, "You seem to have been a privileged person, achieved so much in life. Did you ever think of giving something back to society?" And I had not anticipated, because it was a general feedback round. We were talking of business and things to do at work. And when he said something like that, I was just caught off guard. I had not anticipated a question like that. Yeah, and that got me thinking, what he said was true. And the second thing, over a period of time, I've realized, because of such an incident, that now I want to make a difference to the lives of at least 100 people. That's my goal, in whichever form. So that's how I'm looking at it. Probably 100. I don't know why. It seemed like a good number to start off with. So that's how I would add a bit to how I'm looking at myself in the next few years, Shalabh, if I had to add to more what you said.
Thank you, and that's you beautifully again brought us together. And this is what I kind of love about this perspectives, different perspectives that we have on this fireside chat. That I think often we try and think that pro bono service can be offered by one kind of people in one kind of manner with one kind of background. And I wanted to bring out the different perspectives that we have. So we have kind of somebody who's taking care of a home, somebody who's done with the home, somebody who's done with the career, somebody who's in the prime of the career, and the fact, because we all know each other, so we can take that liberty of kind of challenging a bit and probing a bit and bring it out. So thanks for that. So my next thing is kind of like Kanchan, you said that there are certain myths which are there, and similarly there are set expectations which are there when one begins to volunteer. And I want to understand from each of you, what were your assumptions when you set out, or what were your goals? There are both of these. There are goals that we have. Okay, I'll go and do this, and the assumptions that this is how it will exist and how I will be able to operate. So please tell us a bit about in that initial journey. If you look back, what was the initial motivation, and what were the assumptions with which you went in? Gopi, can I begin with you on this part?
Sure. So one of the first, sort of, a formal introduction to the sector was when I joined a Meridian program, which put people in the government, social sector, and corporates together. And that's when I realized that we seem to have expectations or notions about sectors. Yeah, and then I often found as if belonging to the corporate sector, I had to it was almost like being put on the defensive. You guys don't understand. Yeah, are you shocked by what you see? And that's where I realized that the need for us to have more conversations, because obviously the issues that we're trying to address, I believe are too large to be addressed by any one sector alone. And there's a lot of space for working together if the relationship is based on respect and trust. So my direct involvement was more to understand the sector and do my bit. But what I have been amazed by is the type of passion and like Kanchan mentioned, that there are a fair number of young people in the sector, and the passion, the energy, the vision, and much more, the ability to get results out of resources which are far, far lesser than what corporates would have. The ability to stretch and get meaningful results. So that's what has amazed me, and that's what energizes me as we go forward.
Thanks. Thank you, Gopi. And Gopi, so I'll just continue the next with you itself. Having said this,
sure.
What was your experience like? Once you got a little more deeply involved and started understanding things, what was your experience?
So it's been very, very fulfilling in a way. It's broadened my horizons. It's also helped me see the commonality across people, organizations, because I tend to be more of a systems thinker, if you know what I mean. And I somehow don't see that the difference. We're all people, and I think that the current pandemic, in some way probably has helped us see the connections, across sectors and broadened our purpose. There's always been talk about purpose more in the recent past, but I am hoping that this will help us look at purpose not only at the individual at the corporate level, but also at the individual level. In a way, it broadens purpose.
Okay.
So it's been to me I learn every day. I'm just in some way you hope that you are giving back, but I think the more you get involved in something which goes beyond your horizons, you're adding value to yourself. So that's what I tell my employees also, and the HR folks also told, don't do it from an employee engagement perspective. Yeah, do it because it makes sense. If the why is clear to you, then the rest, the what's in the house will fall in place. So to me, I am taking more from my involvement in this than I'm probably giving back.
Definitely, I think surely you brought out a gem in it. Begin with the why, and the how will become clear into it. So thanks for that, Gopi.
Certainly.
And I'm going to switch to Kanchan next. So Kanchan, you are if I can say, at the mid of the prime of your career. You also have a home, and when you got started thereafter, what was those initial assumptions that you began with, both in terms of expectation and limitations, and what did you discover?
So when I started off, Shalabh, but primarily I think it started off with corporate whiteboard. I had no major experience prior to that. I thought I was going to change the world, and it was like my time, and I would really go out there and tell the NGOs, you're not doing what you need to do, and I'm here to tell you. And that, I think, quickly got corrected, I think, in the first couple of discussions with the teams that we work. So I think that's maybe being naive. It's also because we were rookies. So probably that's how it started, if I may say so. And I have always said this, and I don't know if Aarti is on the call, but it was Aarti's initial speech, if I may say, when she came to Bosch. It actually moved us, and it moved a lot of us because of the kind of stories she told us. And I'm sure they were real, and she's seen those firsthand. So those were the first few impressions for me of this sector. But later on, what quickly changed was more than we trying to help. And I think what Gopi mentioned also, it's they were helping us grow. The assumption that you are going to change the world, you're going to change their lives is not true at all. It's what they brought to our lives, what learnings they helped us achieve. I think that's what changed. And I think like I said, after a couple of discussions with the NGOs that we work with, we realized that passion was unimaginable. It was so incredible. I don't think, at least I can speak for myself, I have felt that kind of passion for anything in life. And for them to sustain that, continue that for such a long time, I think is brilliant. So those were things that I noticed, and those were my initial impressions. What we did when we finished the 12-16 months, I think there was so much wow that was said about what we did. But if you ask me, I think it was so little. Yeah, so that's how I would sum it up in the last 16-18 months. Whatever we did for them, in my view, I think it was so little.
Thank you. Thanks. I do have a follow-up question for you, but I'll give you some time to think it over. So think of, an instance or some specific, either an instance or a story or an experience through which you learned something,
Sure.
got broken or you learned something. But I'll move
Sure.
to Harish now, and then I'll come back to you. So Harish, I think you've seen the world, and you the world of HR, the world of leadership, corporates, and you have been engaged. It's not that when you started with Whiteboard, NGOs were entirely new to you, but even so, when you went deep inside, what were some of the assumptions that you that over a period of time significantly changed your perspective?
Yeah, so I must be very honest. Yeah, so my early engagements with NGOs coming from the corporate sector, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I thought, and I was really arrogant, thinking that I am going to share with them my expertise, my experience, and teach them a few things. Exactly like what Kanchan said when she started off. Yeah, and I did actually begin to telling them what to do and how to do. And I don't know whether because of the kind of experience and the age on my side, they were listening very politely. But I soon realized that the politeness stopped after I went away from them, because they did nothing with whatever I told them. Yeah, I began to realize that their world is real to them, and where I was coming from is a world which is different from theirs. This made me pause and started to observe, listen a lot more, and started learning. And I realized that there is so much that they have to teach me, that it is far better for me to be present and respond rather than assume and start directing. Yeah, that was the biggest lesson that I learned after I started engaging with them as close quarters. Because while you are at the corporate world, yeah, as member of a company, you go and do a one-day volunteering or at best a week's volunteering. Yeah, and they actually tolerate you, be nice to you, allow you to do your bit, and then vanish from that scene. But if you're going to engage with them in a slightly longish kind of a tenure, they begin to start realizing that what you're saying is not really adding value. And it took them a little time to present it to me. And I soon started realizing that this is a world from which I can learn a lot, as I can contribute along with them to making a difference to the cause that they are serving. So that was my big assumption breaker.
Thanks, Harish, for putting it so directly. And I think I hope some of our listeners who, some of the audience who's, and this is also being cast on Facebook Live. So some people who are there, who still think that it's a one-way street where we give, and it's because we are giving, so we decide how do we give and what is to be received by the other person, how it is to be treated are things that will get challenged, and people will become a little more open. And thanks for sharing that. So Gopi, coming back to you. So you when your own engagement with the Whiteboard has been as an individual, at a personal level, but you do lead kind of functions that are related to it, HR, CSR, sustainability, etc. In a large company. So given your personal experience, how does it change your approach or your perspective in the company? And but that's again, that's one aspect. But the other is, because still a personal approach, does it limit you in certain ways on what you can still do in the company?
No, I think it actually makes it makes you a more holistic leader. Yeah, in the sense, like I've always said, to be able to be a subject matter expert in your own area with blinkers on as far as a larger environment from which people in general come. Yeah, because companies today are no longer only about the employees of the company. You are part of a larger ecosystem. So I think that the reason why I encourage people to do it also, and Kanchan has also shared it helps make a leader more effective, and I think it develops minds which in no way is limiting. Yeah, of course, the assumption is that you are working with a company where the purpose goes beyond the profits alone, or the responsibility goes beyond your shareholders and to all stakeholders, which I think a large number of companies have realized the need to go beyond, and it only adds value. It doesn't detract at all. So I think my other functions, if you call it that way, have only benefited by my involvement in this sector, and not detracted from it in any manner whatsoever.
Okay, thanks. So Gopi, there's a question that I'll come back to you on, and this is about on day one we had the keynote address, which was on building empathy in business, and how has Indians kind of can be molded to do that. I'll come back.
Sure.
Kanchan, so yeah, tell us, one insight, incident, something that you remember from your experience over the last year and a half.
Yeah, so I think at least in our corporate whiteboard group, I've shared this several times, and Harish, I'm sure you will relate to this example. We've spoken about this so many times. I think the experience was with one of the NGOs that we were dealing with, and each one of us was a Spock with each NGO. So I was the Spock with one particular NGO, and I come from supply chain background, Shalabh, and I am very metric driven. For me, KPIs, metrics, review, having things done, by the timeline, managing it like a project are things that come very naturally to me. And I think what I was trying to do with that NGO was also the same thing. I said, okay, every Wednesday, 5 o'clock, we will have a call, we will catch up, and you tell us what you did in the previous week. So for the first couple of times, that person was quite polite. Like I think Harish also said that they are polite to you and they don't say anything to you. And then either it was getting postponed, it was getting pushed, or the questions were dodged. And I thought maybe the person is not interested. And look at my ego, right? I thought I am doing everything right, and the person is not interested. What is wrong? I called Aarti because Aarti and Harish were supporting us at that time, and I said, Aarti, what's happening? Does she not like me? Then Aarti said, no, I think the way you're approaching this is wrong, and I think you have to give them the time and space to come back to you at their own pace. You can't enforce things. I think that is a learning, because at office, I think it's acceptable because you have a certain deadline or a timeline, because you have clients to satisfy. But in this world, I think it doesn't work that way. That's the realization, and that's the incident, if I may quote, where I was so metric driven, so timeline driven. Maybe for me, 6 months was a very, very long time. For somebody, 6 months is all you need to just make a start. So that's the anecdote, if I can share, Shalabh, of the learning that it's horses for courses. You cannot have the same approach in all settings.
Thank you for bringing that out loud, Kanchan. And I think in the development sector, we often kind of, this is something that worries us, and we are always conscious about is how our metrics, the talk of metrics, the talk of scale, the talk of impact, the way it is measured and what is measured, how realistic and truthful is that to individuals' lives whom we actually try and impact. And I think several NGOs leaders kind of, have this almost a day-to-day challenge with themselves on, conserving what they really have built their organization for versus what is expected of them to kind of, make it more mechanical as an engine to serve a certain purpose and grow and scale. So I think those are definitely dilemmas, and thanks for those kind words that you put out there. Gopi, yes. So empathy, and then I do want to come back to one more aspect, because both Harish and Kanchan shared that, that NGO people are nice and sometimes too nice. I think there are aspects to be learned, as NGO people need to learn how sometimes actually to be more direct, and possibly the corporate sector and the pro bono profession need to learn how to be a little more nice and more accepting, if I can say that. Okay, Gopi, yes, please. Empathy.
So, Shalabh, before I come to that, I know when Kanchan mentioned about metrics, I remember, I often have this conversation with my MD, because we deal with engineers and finance folks, for whom numbers are all that matters, or that's the instinctive approach to any issue. And I often tell them that all that matters cannot be counted, and all that can be counted doesn't matter. Yeah, so I think those are some of the realizations that you develop. Yeah, but coming back, and in some way, I saw Shakti's question about how do you instill the mindset in new hires. Yeah, I think to begin with, leadership needs to walk the talk. That's true of any organization, and much more so of corporates. Yeah, so if the way you look at issues is not whole-brained, and in fact, we encourage our people to be whole-brained, because each one of us, we have preferences in the way we look at things, and we are trained to look at issues depending on our personal preference and the type of environment that we have been part of. And the sooner we realize that looking at issues holistically or in a whole-brained manner, helps give you a superior solution. Yeah, and that has to be seen from the way decisions are taken by leaders, or in any organization. For example, in the current situation, simple issues like some myths have been shattered. Many of us thought that work from home and flexi time and stuff like that worked only for the IT folks, not for the manufacturing or some of the old world organizations. That's been completely turned on its head. But even for simple decisions like how do you get back to work? What is the approach that you will follow? Unless you take a decision that takes into account not just the numbers, the growth rate, and so on, but also the sentiments, the emotions behind it. Yeah, you aren't really addressing the larger section of people. So somewhere you can only develop empathy if the leaders walk the talk, if they display empathy in their own decision making styles. And that is far more powerful. Yeah, of course, there are small things that you can do by way of, say, a volunteering leave, or if say the IT organizations very often have people on the bench to put them to more constructive use and legitimize the time that is being spent using their skills for the larger good. There are ways in which you can nudge people to look at the larger cause. But to me, the most important sort of factor to inculcate empathy or the change in mindset is by practicing it yourself, or the leaders walking the talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Gopi. And there's a question for you from Bono in the question answer box. We'll come to that while you read the question. Harish, so you coach people, you're a mentor you coach leaders, and you are a mentor to kind of several managers and also to teams. Now, how do you kind of as part of your coaching, as part of your mentoring exercise, feel that you can embed this fact about empathy and about opening up the horizon to different people? I can't really put in the right words. I'm sure you understand that what I'm trying to get at.
In fact, Shalabh, if you see, empathy is a word that has been around for a long time, but people never gave it the importance that they have started giving to it more recently. I think the kind of a shock that pandemic has created is making people realize that they are distanced, that they are having to work virtually, and suddenly this word empathy is beginning to make sense to them. Yeah. But if you see any leader, if he or she needs to be effective, they need to understand the context of the people they are leading. They need to appreciate the realities with which they are operating. It's only then that they are able to make themselves relevant. They're able to make themselves of value to the people to follow them. Yeah. And this is something that you can never say and expect them to appreciate. This is only appreciated when they experience it. Yeah. And therefore, when I mentor or coach people, I pretty much start exploring situations when they have felt alienated, when they have felt frustrated, when they have felt disappointed. And when we unbox those situations, we begin to realize that the people who are the cause for this frustration have actually become irrelevant to the individual. And when they start recognizing that, then the key drops. Yeah. And then they are able to appreciate the fact that empathy is a foundation for creating trust, which in turn leads to greater alignment, and effectiveness. Yeah. So it has to be experienced. And as a coach or as a mentor, I don't spend too much time talking about it. I spend my time trying to create a realization of a situation when they found themselves alienated. That's what I do, Shalabh.
Thanks, Harish. And I think if I can take the liberty of saying that, through our initiatives of Pro Bono, including our whiteboard initiative, we are able to actually create some of those situations where leaders and managers can actually go and experience and, like you said, discover their own self.
In fact, the corporate whiteboard philosophy was that can we get high potential leaders to experience world outside what they are used to? And it is to experience that and then begin to realize that there are other leadership styles and approaches which can be effective too. Yeah, and I think Kanchan is somebody who can talk more about it as to whether it really met that goal.
So yes, Kanchan, Harish has already put you in the spot.
Yeah.
But also kind of trying to think that, so given that again, both Harish and Gopinath are kind of, at a different level in their careers. For you, what were the compulsions or what were the limitations inside your company when you were, introduced to this?
So in terms of compulsions, I wouldn't think from the company side there were any compulsions, Shalabh. I think it was an opportunity that was given. I don't know if I can say high pot leaders because I don't know how you define that, but at least they called us high pot. We felt good about it. They chose a few high pot leaders, and like what Harish rightly put, it was to experience a world that's beyond corporate life. And I think that's an opportunity. So I wouldn't call it a compulsion, neither personally nor professionally. So I think we were more than happy to do that, both at that time Bosch offering that opportunity and for me to be doing something like that. I think in terms of limitations is really the time. It's not about resource, it's not about your skill, it's not about your ability. I think it's about time. And since we spoke about the particular aspect of somebody who has to manage home, work, and this part of life, I think it's the possibility to give the time at a time when the NGO needs you. So it's not just about being available when you are available. And you mentioned in the beginning, it's about giving in a form that is well received. It's not just about giving. Yeah, so I think the time was a limitation. It will be for most of us because we have several things to balance now at this stage of our life. So that I would call the limitation. But otherwise, in terms of either the will or the skill, I don't think there was any limitation from that sense. And I just wanted to add one other point when we were speaking about the empathy part. Yeah, and this is one of the things that I wrote in my blog also, something called the scars of life. So that's the title that I gave to the blog. The scars of life really talked about the scars that you see on your body. So if you are injured, if you have a surgery, you see that scar. And then you probably, the empathy, if I may say so, comes naturally because you say, oh God, what has happened? Something is broken, something is stitched. But the scar that you create in people's mind by the words that you say or you don't say are for life, and those are not seen. And if you're able to see those scars of life and then be able to respond to those scars of life, I think is where the empathy plays its most pivotal part. So that's how I would relate to it. Yeah.
That's wonderfully kind of put together. Thanks Kanchan for that. And so I'll go to Gopi now. There's this question from Ponu, and Ponu again is from the whiteboard in Bangalore. So hello Ponu. Thanks for being here. And so the question is to Gopi, and this I can read this and then Gopi, if you can answer. So Gopi, what gets measured gets done, the usual corporate metaphor. So don't you think this is important for NGOs as well? More so that they understand their purpose more than a corporate company.
Hi, Panur. Good to connect over this forum. But specifically, what I've seen is, one of the pet peeves that many nonprofits have of corporates is that, they just want too many numbers, and then, there is almost, a feeling that, we are so obsessed with numbers that the real purpose for which they exist, gets, sidelined. But, clearly the truth is somewhere in between, in the sense, I've had day-long sessions with with NGOs where we've sort of helped them look at their purpose and their strategy in a more structured way, because very often, while we've spoken about the passion, the downside of passion is sometimes you get so absorbed that in what you're doing that you are unable to see the larger picture. So it certainly makes sense for NGOs as much as any other organization to step back and be clear about why they exist. What are their strategic priorities? In the long term, medium term, and so on. So some of these tools which are used by corporates, certainly can be used, with clear benefit in the non-profit world as well. No doubt about it. As long as we resist the temptation to look at measures from in the space that nonprofits operate, it certainly is not a quarter to quarter measure of success. So it's important to sort of differentiate between the output and the impact, and which is why both they themselves and the corporates that they partner with need to look at impact assessment from a slightly more long-term perspective. So clearly, yes, you cannot shy away from measuring or being clear about purpose, as long as you're not measuring for the sake of measurement. But I'm sure Bono knows this even better than I do.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Gopi. And let me remind that we have just about 10 to 12 minutes of the discussion left. I'm happy to see the questions are already flowing in. Just shows how the conversation is engaging for the participants. There are questions in the question answer box. There are questions in the chat box. And let me just read one or two comments which are there in the chat box while we proceed the discussion. Jyoti Patil says, how true, Kanchan, giving your time when the NGO needs you. And then Vandana Gupta, two panelists, is writing that Kanchan, the scars of life is a very good way to understand empathy. So Kanchan, you definitely have made a connect. Thanks for that. And Kanchan, there's another question for you, but that will come to later. But I do want to kind of, throw a googly at you and put you in a spot. Not really googly, put you in a spot. As the only woman out of the four of us over here, what is there a different perspective, whether as a woman professional or as a woman citizen or as a woman homemaker? How do you think the expectation, experience, challenges, complexities, whatever you might call it, is different, or is something that possibly women should consider, or possibly men should consider? Some light on that.
So again, I'll use a certain jargon that at least we use in our corporate world, something called headwind and tailwind. So the tailwinds that we have as women is the fact that you are expected to be empathetic, you're expected to be polite, you're expected to be nice, you're expected to be kind, you're expected to understand others' needs. So I think to me, thankfully, it came naturally. So that was a tailwind, and those were the things that actually acted as strengths to be able to step into that world, even though it was new. So coming to the headwinds, I think headwinds is because you have to, or more than headwind, I think it's our own inhibition. You want to be good in every aspect of your life. Again, as a woman, you put this undue pressure on yourself that you have to be a great mother, you have to be a great wife, you have to be a great daughter, you have to be great at work, and everything you have to get 90 on 100, if not 100 on 100. I think that's the pressure that we put on ourselves. And one of the ways, in my view, at least I was able to solve for, is having a very honest conversation with people back at home. So if I can say, my husband is as much a hands-on father as I would be a hands-on mother. In fact, I think he does things much better than I do. So if those are the things that you're honest with your spouse, your partner, in saying that you want to do this at this stage of your life, and if the person is caring and understanding enough, you get that help. So that's the thing, Shalabh, where a woman probably, I'm not speaking for myself, but I think a woman needs to ask, whereas if a man needs to do this, I think he just goes and does it. But maybe a woman needs to ask for help, and I think it will change over a period of time. But in my case, I was fortunate enough that support came naturally after having an honest conversation, and the family rallies around you. You can't do everything in your life if the family is not rallying around you. So for me, I feel blessed that such an ecosystem exists around me. And if I have to look back at Bosch again, Bosch at that time, which gave this an opportunity, I think did not differentiate whether there was a woman or a man who was getting into that corporate whiteboard membership. I don't think they differentiated, okay, there were 4 people, one has to be a woman. I don't think they did that. They did it by merit. So I think if that situation changes, that you choose a person by merit, then this again, the myth that I was talking of, one of the myths that need to be busted, that you have to be a man or a woman to contribute, will anyways go away.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that, Kanchan, for that honest and bang on opinion. And bang on is a word I'm picking up from the chat, Jyoti. Okay, Harish. There are professionals at the early start of their career. There are professionals at the mid stage, like Kanchan is possibly there. And I want to focus on these two people, on these two segments, who don't receive executive coaching, who possibly undergo the cutthroat competitive world that they are trying to make their name in. And it's looking back, it's easy to say this should have been done. But when you are that younger self, why will you do it? What will make you do it? So any advice, what can we as organizers do something to engage people early on in their career? What is the advice that you can give to young professionals to consider when they are thinking of their career, and to NGOs when they're looking to engage such people? You're on mute.
Shalabh, in many ways, the current generation actually has answered this for themselves. Unlike us and our predecessors, they don't believe in sequential experiences. They believe in simultaneous experiences. Yeah, and they actually balance their lives very well. They try to do many things at the same time. Yeah, and I think that's the most important lesson that corporates need to understand, and organizations like yours need to understand as well. We need to present the opportunities to them at an early stage and celebrate and recognize people who are actually gaining and contributing in these forums. I think that then, because they are continuously wanting to benchmark themselves with others, they try to learn from each other far more, thanks to the social media connects and things like that. I think we need to leverage that. And then it is for them to experience it and figure out, is this something that they like? Is this something that they like to do more often? Rather than mandating it, rather than giving it as a stricture, I think creating the opportunity and allowing them to experience it and then deciding is probably the way forward. And I think a lot of corporates are creating those opportunities, but today I think they are doing it more of as a one-off volunteering opportunity where they go as a group and they take up an activity and they do it. I think a little bit of skill-based volunteering is something that they must be introduced to, because do what you're good at or do what you want to do. Yeah. And then match it with an organization that needs it. Don't thrust it on an organization that doesn't need it. Yeah. And that's when you create the right experience and the right outcome. I think that's what we need to be doing differently. And this is what I've figured out working with different NGOs, because quite often NGOs tell us saying that, yeah, we painted this wall 5 times in the last 1 year because there are 5 different teams which came. Yeah. That's not their need. And I often tell the NGO saying that you need to also do things differently with the volunteering organization and the volunteers. Be focused and don't get distracted. Just because somebody says, I want to do it, don't get distracted. Tell them what is it that you want. Yeah, and be demanding. Don't be shy. Tell them that this is what I want. Can you get this for me? And if you can't do it, can you tell me somebody else who can get it for me? And they need to also get to be more confident and proud because they are doing a fantastic job. Yeah, and they just are giving an opportunity for the volunteers to come and share the stage and space with them, really. Yeah, the NGOs need to understand this, and then we will have a very, very balanced equation between the volunteering organization and the NGOs or CSOs that you're working with.
Yes, thanks, Harish. And definitely that's a role that we are also trying to play, because the same wall being painted again and again is something that keeps on coming back again and again, as in conversations as well. And we have, at iVolunteer, we support both, the 1 day of volunteering, because we believe that's where volunteering gets started, and you get a taste. It's like a taster session, and then you move to much more in-depth pro bono kind of volunteering. But we are also conscious that we play that role of balancing what our NGO partners need and what our corporates might be interested in. And I think each of us needs to play that role delicately and balance it very well. There's an associated question from Aarti, which I want to put at you, Harish, again. Should volunteers be celebrated better to create inspiration, especially at a senior level? So we just spoke about the beginner and the intermediate, but at a senior level, is celebration need? Will that create inspiration?
I think it is not that the senior folks are looking for celebration, but they're looking for the impact that they're creating. I think more than celebrating the individuals, I think celebrating the organizations which have benefited, is far more important, because at senior levels, they're not looking for individual celebrations, but they're looking for saying that, is what I'm doing of value? Is this something that I need to prioritize? Is this worth giving more time and attention to? Yeah. So I would say celebrate the impact that is getting created by senior folks engaging. I think that is undoubtedly important.
Thanks, Harish.
So, Shalabh, if I may just add, I think it's important to bring visibility to what the seniors are doing, because bringing visibility helps many others to follow in their footsteps. So, like Harish said, it may not be required for them at the individual level, but very often we are conservative about talking about what we do. Yeah, in a corporate, it is important that people see that leaders are going beyond their mandate, and bringing visibility and celebration also helps make them role models, or hopefully influence a large part of the organization. So to that extent, there is probably merit in that.
Thanks, thanks, Gopi. And I wanted to shine a spotlight back on you, because you're somebody who heads functions at a company currently, and so you understand this the need for scale, the need for metrics, the inability sometimes or limitations to drive people to participate in long-term, long-serving, deep impact pro bono style volunteering versus the numbers that need to get reported. How do you deal with that situation? There are things that you want to do, but sometimes the response is not coming in from the employees. There are things you want to do. Sometimes there are limitations from the policies or from the management or budget possibly. There are requests that come in from NGOs. There are requests that come in from senior management. How do you keep that balance going?
So, to my mind, finally, it needs to be meaningful for the individual, for the organization, for the NGO. Yeah, I mean, if you do these things just because it is the right thing to do, then there is a limit to how far you will go. Yeah. So one is to be as flexible as you can be. Yeah. For example, one of the nice things that we did along with Aarti was to have a poll where we asked people, what is it that you want to do? Yeah, it has to resonate with the people who are giving their time. It has to resonate with the organization's values. Yeah. So the idea is to make sure that you have a model which takes care of these different priorities, which not all of them may align with each other, and not assume that it will fit into a nice clean model. Because we are talking of a much larger complex issue, than just a simple metric that the corporate needs to fulfill. So as long as like I said, very clearly, your heart is in the right place. What the larger purpose is, why you're doing it. Yeah, there could be many hows. There could be many different ways in which do, and it will converge than in the usual corporate metric of next quarter this has to happen. Yeah, it doesn't really happen that way. A comfort with ambiguity is one of the prerequisites for making this successful, and the long-term haul is as important. You can't really change culture or change overnight.
Gopi, you said comforted ambiguity. Is that the phrase that you used?
Comfort with ambiguity.
With ambiguity.
Yeah,
with ambiguity.
Comfort. Yeah.
No, fully agreed, and I agree. It's like if you sometimes when we try and box everything, and a living thing, we try and box it in with specific metrics, it becomes a problem to contain it, and it's also a limitation. But yes, it helps with giving it some direction and making it more understanding. And a related question to that has come from Kanchan a little while back, and this is from an anonymous attendee saying that I think metrics are important. The NGO sector is quite notoriously known for working or moving very slowly. How do you balance KPIs with understanding the NGO sector? So, Kanchan.
Yeah. So I'll give an example with the same NGO with whom I had this problem of having a review every Wednesday. So how we changed gears and how we changed guard is we started by zooming out. So that in some parlance is called taking the balcony view. Yeah. So you take the balcony view, you take the NGO with you to that balcony view, and you try and paint a picture. So we use something called design thinking with that NGO and painted a picture of what you want to be at that point in time. And again, we didn't take very long stretch goals. We said 3 months down the line, there is an event. And if you want, what is it that you want from that event? And I think in our discussion somewhere, we said that you ask what the NGO wants and you don't tell them what you want to do. Yeah. So that was what we did. So I think that's the way to balance. You take a balcony view, you present a picture, paint a picture, say we want to reach there, and then you define those small steps. Again, with the empathy that they don't know how to do it. It's not that they don't want to do it. These steps, milestones, reaching a certain timeline or a point by a certain time doesn't come to them naturally. So it's not the unwillingness, but it's probably the lack of understanding. So I think to show that picture, make smaller steps, show them that this results will do this for you. I think will then you develop that partnership. It's more about coming together as partners than saying, okay, I am the volunteer or I am the whiteboard member and you listen to what I'm saying. That won't work. So if you draw those steps slowly and steadily, I think that's the way to do it. If I say you want to achieve 5 lakh rupees revenue by so-and-so date, I think that doesn't ring a bell. But you say you're going to make the difference in the lives of 50 doctors, then it's different, right? So that's how I would put it.
Thank you. Thanks, Kanchan, for putting it so succinctly. Okay, so I realized that, we have, as per the clock, we have only 3 more minutes, and I love the way this discussion has been going. We've been kind of, so direct. There's so many gems we've discovered, and the questions have been flowing. So definitely the participants are quite engaged. So moving on to the last segment, and I'm combining 2 things together. One is going forward, what is your own view of, how you will engage, or what is your advice that you have for anybody who's beginning to on his pro bono journey, or any NGO who's beginning to engage pro bono volunteers. So what are your final thoughts on to culminate this discussion? Let me begin with Harish, because you are unmute.
Okay, so to be very honest, pro bono is in many ways not the reality of what we do. Yeah. So while we may not be getting money for the work that we do, we get lots of things. In fact, when I look back in the pro bono journey, I've earned more, I've learned more, and I've grown more.
Wow.
I've earned more regard and goodwill. I've learned more passion and commitment, and I've grown more as a person and as a human being. Yeah, I've got hell of a lot. So it can't be said pro bono. Yeah. So people, when they come into the space, must come in knowing fully well they do benefit. Yeah, there is benefit for them too. And for me, going forward, I think I will continue doing this kind of engagement and supporting people. I probably will evangelize this space a lot more, because I think this space needs people, and lots more people can benefit by being in this space too. Yeah. And I would only advise people coming into the space, remember, don't make the mistakes that I made earlier. Remember the 3 L's, which are very important: listen, learn, and then leverage your capabilities. I think this would be my advice to people coming in. And I can tell you one thing: your family life improves hell of a lot. My wife is the happiest person ever since I have started pro bono volunteering. She says I'm beginning to appreciate her pro bono work throughout her life.
Wonderful. I think that's you brought us so nicely, Harish, and definitely I think for all those, especially all those people out there who say, I don't have the time for this because I have work and then I have family. I think the entire discussion is coming together saying, well, it helps improve your work and your family. So thanks for that, Jem, Harish. Okay, so Gopi, your final thoughts.
In fact, after the way Harish put it, I don't think I can do it better. Very beautifully put. But yes, I think, time is not really the constraint. I mean, once you get, addicted to this, time just materializes. So, anybody who, we just need to give people the required time to align to the cause. As far as NGOs are concerned, again, and I say this to people in the company as well. Yeah, don't form impressions about either people or sectors at the first shot, because there are organizations and there are organizations. There are people and there are people. So you will have the complete variety of organizations and individuals, both in whichever sector you talk about. So give yourself time. And as far as I'm concerned, this is not, this is an area of work which just grows on you. Once you're into it, there really cannot be looking back. So I look forward to continuing the journey for sure. And I guess that's obvious.
Thank you. Thanks, Gopi. And Kanchan.
Yeah. So the master said 3L. So the student wants to say something, some other alphabet. So the student wants to say 3G. So the student wants to say be generous, be graceful, and also be genuine. So that's my 3G. So as people who want to volunteer, I think along with the 3Ls that the master said, the student wants to say 3G. And from the NGO side, I think, again, this is drawing from my experience. I think the leap of faith. I have felt that there is some amount of trust deficit, and I'm saying this with all sincerity and with all humility. It's not about saying that they don't want to, but I think the trust deficit exists, and then that causes the relationship that much longer to develop. So I think the NGOs can, maybe develop trust and take that leap of faith that this generation wants to help, wants to contribute. It's not to put it on their resume; they really want to help. So I think that leap of faith is what I would request the NGOs to take and help the relationship grow and develop.
Thank you, Kanchan. So 3L from Harish, 3G from Kanchan, and we had comfort with ambiguity from Gopinath, and we have Yan Peng from China, one of the pro bono leaders in China I know very well. She says that this is a better husband through pro bono. So, I think I really loved this discussion, and I think it was really a fireside chat. We challenged each other, we brought out the best, and I think we have a lot to learn and take away back home and implement. And wish you all well in your pro bono journey, and I look forward to continuing and deepening the engagement with each of you. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Shalabh.
Thank you, Harish. Thank you, Gopinath. Thank you, Kanchan. This has undoubtedly been one of the most enjoyable sessions of this summit. Yeah, I learned a lot myself, and it was, the insights that you shared, just tremendous. I myself have come from a corporate background, but now, have engaged in the nonprofit sector and have been a pro bono participant myself. So, I could just resonate with everything that each one of you said so well, and you all articulated it so brilliantly. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate your taking the time to be with us on this panel today.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on. So I'm just closing the day. So not the day, actually, this particular session. And sorry for that, closing the day. The day is actually, we have a break till 3:30, and the break is so that you can catch up with your duties in your office, in your work, and as a husband, and then join back with us, or a wife, and join back with us at 3:30. 3:30, we have a panel which focuses on how can intermediaries, organizations like iVolunteer and Pyxera, help pro bono volunteers, support pro bono volunteers. We keep the focus on the individuals, whether they're coming, from at a personal level or from the corporates. We have 4 speakers over there. The first one will be Ikuma Saga, who's the founder and CEO of Service Grants in Japan, one of the first pro bono volunteering organizations in Asia. And then the second speaker, so I'm going to be there on the panel as well, representing iVolunteer. And then we have Peter Yang, founder and CEO of Impact Consulting Singapore. Again, one of the leading organizations, not just in Singapore, but also in a couple of other Southeast Asian countries. Again, very well, and a global proponent of pro bono. And the entire discussion will be moderated by Shilpa Ahluwalia, Director of Global Pro Bono India for Pyxera Global, and also a co-host along with me in this entire webinar. And then we end up at 4:30 with the keynote, or the end note, if you might want to call it, titled The Future of Pro Bono. And this is going to be delivered by Hemang Desai, who's the Global Program Director of Social Sabbatical Portfolio and CSR at SAP. So we look at a telescopic view of what does pro bono look like in the near and the far future. And that's when we end up at 5 today. And like Shakti had said earlier, we have kept that split so that, to take care of different times in Asia. We've got participants from Japan on the eastern side, and even Mexico, on the extreme western side for this particular session. So I'm happy to see that. And when we end the session today at 5:15, participants can actually go on into 5:30, the Global Pro Bono Summit that is also happening. And this is the final day of the Global Pro Bono Summit as well. And just so you know, this is actually a part of 3-leg series that we tried putting together. So the Global Pro Bono Summit happens during, at the European time. It is preceded by the Asia Pacific Pro Bono Summit, which we are co-hosting. And then late in the night by Asian time is the Latin American Summit that happens. And so it's like an entire continuum of Pro Bono that flows through these 3 days. And we'll come to an end today at the end of the day. So please stay tuned in to our Asia Pacific Summit and to the Global and the LATAM one if you can. Thank you once again, and see you at 3:30.